Hello, everybody. Amber here. Welcome back to In Conversation with ATF. My guest today is a voice director, a casting director, and also a writer as well. She's written a bit of ADR scripts, but mainly she's known for voice directing loads of things. She's an Emmy award-winning voice director. She won the Emmy for Centaurworld a few years back, and she also directed an Emmy-winning performance as well. Andy Walkden on Centaurworld as well. But she's known for uh voice directing I do apologize any pronouns. They have been known for voice directing many cartoons, including Clarence, Doraemon 2005, We Bare Bears, Bunnicula, Skylanders Academy, OKKO, Vampirina, The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, which I'm gonna quiz you about that. Infinity Train, Kipo, and the Avengers. Kipo and the Avengers, that would be an entirely different show.
I'd watch
And
it.
yeah, me too. And the Age of the Wonderbeasts, Centaurworld, of course. Transformers Earthspark, most recently. Yeah, there we go. Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai, Merry Little Batman, Rock, Paper, Scissors, most recently, Max and the Midknights, Dead End Paranormal Park, Summer Camp Island, Adventure Time, Fiona and Cake, and many, many more. They are absolutely, I'm in awe. My
Well,
guest
thank you.
is Kristi Reed. Welcome.
Thank you, Amber. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for asking me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, of course, I've got to start by saying thank you. Thank you. You've done so much work, and you've won an Emmy for your voice direction and just everything you've done right. I mean, I first heard of you when I started watching the Rocky and Bullwinkle show a few
Mm-hmm,
years
mm-hmm,
back, and of course,
mm-hmm,
I did the documentary on Bill Scott, and
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I had Tara Strong
mm-hmm,
involved and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
But I want to take it way back. When
Sure.
did you first start getting into voice directing or the business, as they all say?
Yeah. I think a lot of people end up to it in a very circuitous path, and that is 100% the same for me. I was an English major in university, and I always loved stories and telling stories. And in my last semester of university, there was a class that my teacher offered, which was the screenplay as literature. And I never really written or read screenplays before. I definitely hadn't ever written one. And I really loved it. And it was very this distilled idea of writing, and I liked how it just kind of really kind of focused on some very primary aspects of writing that I found very interesting. And so I decided to pursue writing, screenwriting, and then that just kind of morphed as things do. And that came turned into directing. So I ended up doing my graduate degree with a Master of Fine Arts in film, and that at a place called Art Center College of Design here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And I came out of that directing commercials. At the time, there was a pathway of doing live action commercials to get into directing live action.
Yeah.
And I did that. I directed some comedy narrative, 30-second ads, and I quickly realized that I just hated advertising. And a friend of mine at the time was starting something called Bang Zoom Studios,
Oh,
Eric Sherman, and yeah, and he was, when we both of us were very young, he was just starting out. He was also doing indie films, and we both were trying to do something a little different. And while I was doing the commercial thing, he called me up and said, "Hey, I think you'd really enjoy doing these voice directing some of this anime that I'm doing." And I'm like, "I don't know, man, it's not really my thing."
mm-hmm.
And I went back to doing the commercials, and I had a really shitty commercial, and I called him back up, and I was like, "So that job, is it still?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, 100%. Come in." And just very quickly, I started to feel like, oh yeah, this is my vibe. Temperature controlled room, padded walls, people come in their pajamas, the vibe's very chill. And I just kind of took it from there. And I was at Bing Zoom for a while doing some anime, and that turned into video games. And I really wanted to get into original animation. And there was a voice director named Chris Zimmerman who opened a door for me at Cartoon
Chris.
Network. And
Mm.
Chris really was, my gateway into original animation and starting out at Cartoon Network. And from there, it was just from there from It was Clarence, and then Over the Garden Wall, and then We Bear
Oh,
Bears, and then a
I
bunch of
didn't know
stuff
you
after
did
that.
it. I didn't know you did Over the Garden Wall. That's
And then
awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So there
I
you go.
find I find it like it's a huge chain between people who mentor other people. So you start with Gordon Hunt, who was the original dialogue director for everything at Hanna-Barbera. He mentored Andrea Romano. Andrea Romano ended up mentoring, let's say, I think Chris worked alongside her at Hanna-Barbera, sort of kind of learning off her, I believe. And now,
Yeah.
of course, you've just learned off Chris. And I
Yeah,
think
and it's amazing. Chris is, I think a lot of people will say that Chris Ehrman has opened doors for them, and she did it in such the most lovely way. It was just a very, no big deal for her, and yet it was life-changing for me.
I was gonna say because, like, with Gordon, Andrea, Chris, Colette Sunderman,
Yeah.
Serena Irwin as well, and
Mm-hmm.
Susan Blue, and
Mm-hmm.
many other people, and of course you. You're
Mm-hmm.
just up there with those absolutely amazing, and of course Charlie Adler, are just all up there with these
Sure.
amazing people, voice director
Yeah.
wise. Yeah,
And I think there's a lovely history of us always paying that forward. Like I've done it for people coming after me, and I know that other voice directors do it for people as well. And I think there's a lovely history of that I hope always continues.
yeah, definitely. I thoroughly agree with you, and I know
Yeah,
it's not the same sort of business in the UK. It's a lot different over here. Usually, they
yeah,
get children to do the voices of kids in
yeah.
animations,
Hmm.
and for other adult voices, they either get we have a like the same seven voices, or we just use any on-camera
Yeah.
comedian, anyone like
Right,
that. So
right.
it's really weird how that works. But of course, one of the earliest things you did, I'd say, for Cartoon Network, would I say
Hmm.
earliest to considering was OKKO Let's Be Heroes.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
So
yeah,
huge fan of that show. I've met Stephen
yeah.
Ogg and Jim Cummings, Lordbox
Oh,
fan,
nice.
and Professor
That's great.
Venomous. So I was like,
I agree.
what's your stint been like voice directing, not just for OKKO, but for the entirety of Cartoon Network in general to this day?
Oh, what do you mean by that? Be more specific.
How has it been? Has it been like it's hard for me to sort of explain, but like has it been how would you say it has been? Was it challenging? Was it fun? How would you say
Cartoon
working for
Network during those years was magical. I mean, I knew that during those years that we were in some halcyon days that probably would never see again. And I think that's accurate. We're in a very specific, I think, era of Cartoon Network, starting
yeah.
with, Adventure Time through until maybe there's, some through like through until let's say 2018 or 19, maybe even 20. You can count that whole almost a decade. And there was just a vibe happening there that I have seen no place else, and I don't know if I will ever see it again. There was so much creativity and freedom given to the showrunners that it just fostered this really beautiful creative space. And I think that the work that came out of that during that time evidences that. Shows like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, OKKO, Summer Camp Island, I think is a really beautiful show. There's just so many We Bear Bears, so many wonderful shows that came out during that window of time that are sweet and thoughtful and smart and well written and um, I am grateful that I got to be a part of so many of those during that window. I don't know when we will get back to that in anytime soon.
Who knows, honestly. It's just
Yeah,
like it's welcoming generation after generation, which is with the different
yeah.
art styles
They
and
just were
stuff.
so inclusive, I think is probably the thing that makes them so stand out-ish right now, is they
Yeah.
were just so thoughtful about making sure that no one felt sidelined.
Steven Universe is a good example. And of course,
Amazing
you
example of
directed
that.
the second series, Steven
Uh-huh.
Universe. What was it
Hmm.
called? Was
Yeah.
it Future? I can't remember.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Future, I knew it. There we go.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and I was going to say, speaking on the subject of diversity, I wanted to ask a
Hmm.
question. A similar
Sure.
one was asked towards Susan Blue at TF
Sure.
Nation last year.
Okay.
But as a voice director in the LGBTQ plus community,
Hmm.
how does it feel nowadays to do all of these shows and see representation of different groups? So, for example, the
Hmm.
character of Nightshade in Transformers
Hmm.
Earthspark being
Hmm.
non-binary, and all
Hmm.
these different other shows. How does it make you feel? How do you think it's evolved from the late 2000s to 2024?
I mean, obviously, it's had a huge evolution, and I tried my best to be a part of every single one of those. As a member of the queer community, I want very much to elevate those voices, to create positive mirroring for younger children. And I've done a lot to try and be a force within that. There is I don't know if an organization that you're aware of called GLAAD, which is I do a media awards, but they're basically a big organization here in the States. I think they're international, but they're mainly here in the States that tries to spotlight positive imaging of queer people in the media. And they have an award show every year. That's this big star-studded event. And we didn't have a category in there for children's programming. They had a category that we could uh, go ahead and try and get an award in, but it was just a general live action award, and we were competing alongside shows like Transparent, which is this very adult show that can say things like gay and God, words we could not even say during that time. And
Yeah.
so we fought very hard, finally got a category. There was a wonderful article that came out, Business Insider, by a writer from the queer community named Abby White, and it documented the entire history of the presence of queer characters in children's programming. And there is a jump from 2018, which was the year that the GLAAD Award came out, to 2020, to 2 years of the GLAAD Award being out, and the amount of queer characters in children's programming rose by 222% after they started getting recognition of queer characters within the industry. So I don't think the award entirely did that big jump in numbers, but I think it helps. I think people being able to highlight and get any kind of notoriety, either in the press or otherwise, is a big thing. But it's
Yes.
going down now. Yes, we have Nightshade, we have all of these representation, but just this year, the beautiful show Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur had a very specific trans episode that was
I did
shelved by
see.
Disney. Yeah, The
Yes, I did
Gatekeeper.
see that on
And it's a
Twitter
fantastic, and you
or
can still
X or
see it.
whatever.
It's out there on the internet. But it
Hmm.
is 100% a queer forward trans story arc that doesn't hold anything back, and it is shelved. So yes, we've had progress, but it's eroding. And I think a lot of us out there are trying to do something. I'm working on a project now that will try to help bring awareness back to all of this.
Ooh, I can't wait for it. And that sounds
Yeah,
really exciting.
yeah, yeah.
Now I want to go sort of in order of your career, but I couldn't resist asking this question before
Sure.
we move on to the next show. When the character of Nightshade was created, I believe it was Dale Malinowski. I can't remember who told me. I
Hmm.
think it was either Nicole Dubuque or Kat Kavari who told me it was Dale who created Nightshade.
Okay.
But during the recording sessions with forgive me if I sorry if I pronounce their name wrong, Z Infante.
That's
Z.
correct.
Okay.
Hmm.
What was it? How did you help Z develop the character of Nightshade? Were they given free reign, or were you the one who's to tell them, "Oh, they sound like this," or they,
Yeah,
they're
I
this
mean, that's one of
character?
the things that I think is important about having different people from your backgrounds in life in all aspects of this, is that I very much want to be there when we're directing and creating queer characters in the room so that they sound like people who actually are from the queer community, as opposed to having somebody who's not from that community direct these characters. But we talked a lot about it. There was a whole lot about me wanting Z to sound um, not like a robot. It's important to me that non-binary is an identity that sounds like people, and not you're
Yes.
not going to remove anything from that.
Mm,
And so anything that made anything sound that they were anything less than 100% a soul that bleeds and feels was something I was very careful not to step into, and wanted to definitely bring forward that this is a being that is just like anybody else. And we worked together and we found it. We worked with the media group that I mentioned, GLAAD, to make sure that
yeah.
there was also fair representation and all of that. And we actually went back and forth a little bit on what they transformed to and what their image would be when they transformed, and that kind of changed a little bit as we were trying to make sure that when they found their image to which they wanted to transform into, was something that properly evidenced them as a non-binary person.
Yeah, and I was gonna say because there was an Sam, who's voiced by Alicia Mullally, who was also
Yeah,
goes by she
yeah,
and they,
yeah.
just like you.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
So what was it like, sort of talking with Alicia, sort of to deliver the monologue of, Sam's monologue of
Yeah.
explaining about being non-binary or what non-binary it is.
I mean, for all those things, whenever I am working on a show and we are dealing with something that's delicate, be it this, be it Dead in Paranormal Park, the lead character is trans. Whenever we have these characters
Yes.
that are talking about these very sincere, very real emotions that I know that actor can connect to. We just got to bring the room down, create space, take the hands off the clock, and just
Yeah.
encourage your actor to tap in to their authentic self. And
Yes.
that's what those sessions are about. And that everything else needs to be secondary to this being an authentic, sincere, real moment. And whatever we have to do from my end to the studio to the actor to make sure that everything we're tapping into is from a lived experience is tantamount for me in those moments.
Yeah, definitely. I wholeheartedly agree with you there,
Yeah.
Chrissy.
And all those moments, they're only as good as the authentic self you put into it as an actor.
Yes.
And so that's what I try to encourage and pull out of it.
Good for you. I'm very
Thank you.
happy.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Now this is one show I've got to bring up before we talk about the other stuff like between this and Earthspark. The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. Now
Okay.
this is I wasn't sure who voice directed it because I
Yeah.
believe there is a video out there of Tara Strong doing a recording session and it's Scott
Yeah.
Fellows who's voice directing her. So
Uh-huh.
was it you
What the
or was
hell
it
happened
Scott?
with that? What's the deal?
Uh,
So there's some industry stuff in there you're gonna unpack right now. So
oh,
some dirt, yeah.
sign me up.
So when I came on the show, it was before Scott came on, and there was a showrunner on there, Sebastian. I can't remember his last name. And he was the one who had got it through development. We did the first 4 or 5 episodes together, and we're really clicking as a team. He was also a creator of a show called The Librarians, and it was not at that point. It had been under the belief that that was not going to get a third season. And then about somewhere in the middle of our first and couple records, he got a call that that show was being picked up. They were going to do a third season. And he decided to go back to that show and then roll off of the Rocky and Bullwinkle that I was working with him on.
Ah,
And Scott came on. And
ah,
Scott and I just had a different way of doing it. He wanted to recast the lead, and that was fine. And so there was just a lot of different moving parts, and it started to get a little bit more clear that Scott had a different vision than when I started it, and that's fine. And I just was like, okay, then I think that you should take over because you have a different way that you want to do it that is clearly yours. So you're the showrunner now. Peace out. And so and then he took over from there.
recasting the lead. What happened there? What was going on there?
I mean, he just
If you
came in
want to
and
say.
didn't like, yeah, he just didn't like what was happening, and he wanted to go with a different vibe, and that was when he brought in Tara Strong. And I think that they had a previous history of working together, and so
Hmm. Oh
that
right, so the whole cast was unchanged aside from Rocky's voice.
correct. Yeah.
Wow, and we'll never know
Yeah.
who voiced Rocky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe one
Yeah.
day, who knows? But you got me,
Yeah.
you got me,
So
you
yeah.
got me.
So when I was there in the beginning of it, it was a different person voicing that role, and then Scott came in and felt that needed to go in a different direction, and that's totally under his purview to do. He is a showrunner; he can do it,
Yeah, yeah.
and so
Wow.
and that's how it all pivoted.
Wow. And of course,
Hmm.
you look at I'm looking at the cast. Of course, you've got Tara, and then you've got Ben Diskin, who's a veteran,
Hmm.
and then Darren
Hmm.
Norris, and also
Hmm.
Brad Norman. I believe this was his first voiceover job.
I think it was. It might have been at least of that size.
I was gonna say because you've got Tara, she's done it for over 30 years, and then you've got Brad, who's only this is his first gig, and I was wondering at the time, like how did he get the role? But I'm like, general audition,
Yeah.
anyone could be picked
Yeah.
regardless of how long
Yeah.
they've been in the biz. It
Yeah.
was just him
And he
that
just had
decided
the
to.
best, particularly when it's something like a voice match. If you can match that existing performance, it's a great way to get into the room.
Yeah, definitely. And that was a really nice show. I loved it. And
Great. I
you
mean, it did very. I got an Emmy nomination for those first few episodes. So yeah,
did ya?
I did. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know. That's actually really cool. Well done. I
Yeah.
can't remember
Well, thank you.
who. Yes, because I remember Weird Al Yankovic is in this, and he's also in
Yeah.
Earthspark as well. So
I've
do
done a
you
lot
voice?
with Weird Al. Yeah, he's just the nicest dude you'd ever
I've
meet.
heard.
Like he's just
Yes.
like just a regular guy.
Yeah, definitely. I believe it. I
Yeah,
believe
he's
that.
just the
I
nicest
mean,
guy. Yeah.
I spoke to him for the Bill Scott documentary, and he was
Oh,
just
nice.
He says yes. He was I was like, oh, I'm not gonna get to speak to him or something like that. But then they were like, oh yeah, I will speak to you, but
Yeah,
only 20 minutes. I was like,
yeah.
wow,
I'll take
okay,
it. Yeah,
yeah, I'll take it.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
he's just yeah, he's the best.
So we had a really long chat, and just he said so
Great.
much. I didn't know he had actually worked with Bill Scott months before he died. Like he brought him
Mm,
in to record the George of the Jungle theme song for his
mm,
album in the 80s.
hmm.
So that was quite cool.
You know that he
Um,
was in Transformers in the 80s too.
yes, he was. Dare to Be Stupid was in the
Uh-huh.
86 movie, and then he was
Mm-hmm.
Wreck-Gar in
That's
Transformers
yeah,
Animated, and
yeah,
now he's back
yeah,
as
yeah.
Cosmos.
I know. He's got a long history with all that stuff. He's just a great guy.
I know, yeah. And speaking of great guys and gals and non-binary pals, there's a lot of guest stars in Earthspark that I saw online.
Hmm.
Zelda Williams is one of them, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who else is there because I did see an article and it was saying about all the new guest stars for
Mm.
season 2. I'm trying to find it now because I
Okay,
want
you're good. You find it.
to. Yeah, of course I will. I'll try. Here we go. Season 2 guest stars. Uh, there's nothing coming up because I'm probably sick. Oh, here we are. Rolls out with new guest stars. This was back in May. Time flies. Let's have a look. Yep. Flea. Flea. You
Yeah,
got Flea.
yeah,
He was in
yeah,
the Malfoys, I think. I don't know.
yeah. He
Richard
was. You're right.
Ayoade. Yeah. And Richard
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ayoade. Yeah. Wow. Wow. You got a good.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you can answer this, and if you can't,
Okay.
that's honestly completely fine. Um, do you think? This is literally just a. Do you think there
Yeah.
will be a season 3 of Earthspark, or can you not confirm or deny?
I mean, I would think it's fair to say that solid maybe. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think there's reason to keep a little hope out for something. It may not be a full
Yeah,
season, but we might get a little something.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Because what
Yeah.
I've seen from it so far, it's lovely. Because I think it does air in the UK.
It does.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it has on CBBC.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that iteration of Transformers. I don't really do those kind of shows, like those big kind of tentpole uh, action shows are not really my thing. I do tend to like a little bit more nuanced dialogue. But when Dale reached out to me to do the show, he said, I expressed my concern, and he was like, "We want to do something like, something really nuanced, something really bring it all down a little bit." And I was like he said,
yeah,
he said Iron Giant, and I was like, oh my God, you could totally do that with this, and I would love to be a part of that. And I think we, did that for the most part, and I'm very proud of the performances in that show.
yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got everyone. You've got Alan Tudyk. You've got Rory McCann.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking,
yeah,
wow, this is just so
yeah.
many different
And everybody
people.
really just brought their heart to it. I think that, Kat talks about how important it was for her to do that and what that meant for her and her community and from her perspective to be a transformer. Like one day she just sent me a text. We were actually in the middle of a session and she just kind of had this moment where she stared off and I'm like, "You good?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then later she goes, "I'm sorry, I just dozed out for a minute because I realized I'm a fucking transformer." And I'm like, "Yeah, you are."
That's so funny.
It's
I
awesome.
was,
It's great.
yeah, definitely. I was gonna ask, were Kat and Zeno given, considering they were voicing original characters, and this also goes
Hmm.
for Cyrus, who voices Jawbreaker, and of
Hmm.
course, I
Hmm.
know we talked about Z before.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
New Transformers characters, were they given, and everyone and all the other new ones, were they given
Hmm.
the complete freedom to come up with their own voice, or did you have a
Yeah, I
helping
think
hand in
so.
part of it?
I mean, we talk a little bit. I mean, I never really try to put someone in too big of a box anyways when we're creating a new character. What I would like to do is I'll talk, I'll show them artwork and
Yep.
and then I'll talk a little bit about what motivates them, what's important to them, um, what their overall story arc may be, because a lot of times actors come into the room and they've only gotten episode one, and I've seen more of that. So I try to give them more of that information so that we can kind of seed all of that in the beginning, so that when we get to that last episode, none of that seems completely out of the story arc.
Yeah.
And then from that, we just kind of, it's like a stone that you kind of chisel away until we find like, yeah, that's it. That's the place. I know that in the beginning for Twitch's character for Kat, we played her a little more manic than what we ended up going with. It ended up being, sometimes you try something that's got a lot of energy with it and you're like, oh my God, I can't listen to this for 22 minutes. My head hurts.
Yeah.
And so we dialed it back. But yeah, that was, I try to always give them space to figure out who their characters are. That allows an actor to feel like they're contributing, which is very important.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. And just real quick before we properly move
Yeah,
on to Transformers Earthspark, I'd like to obviously bring up Centaurworld.
sure.
Mainly because not just because of like the terrific animation and everything like that, but the fact that you were nominated not just with that, but like with Summer Camp Island as well for best direction. Like,
Yeah,
wow.
it was awesome. Yeah.
I've got to ask, like, waking up that morning or that day when you get contacted to find out you were not nominated once but twice in the same category, how did that make you feel?
So you don't. So how you find out you've been nominated is they make the announcement, and then depending on how invested you are, either you are reloading that page or you're going about your day, and someone will text you. Typically, is what happens.
Okay.
And so I was in the middle of a session for another show,
Mm-hmm.
and and I kept getting all these texts in the middle of it, and it was first it was the showrunner on Fiona and Cake, Adam Muto, had sent me a text and said, "Congratulations, very well deserved." And I thought that he was texting because Fiona and Cake had been nominated, but I didn't realize it was Summer Camp Island. And I was like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that's amazing." And then Ashley DeWitt, who is a casting and voice director that I mentored and who is now doing her own thing, sent me the screen grab that showed that was both of them. And I was like, oh shit. It's just, and I was in the middle of trying to not be distracted by running a session during all of this. So it feels great, but and maybe that's the best way is that you have something to distract you so that you can't go down too much of that. But it's amazing. And it's one of those things you're just kind of, at the end of the session, everybody had gotten the news. And so all of us were like, so I was thank the actor, and then everybody was like, "Oh my God, you got blah 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 blah," and that's amazing. It's a great thing. Everybody should have that kind of feeling at once in their life. You feel very respected and validated, and all those things.
Yes, and you had a good advantage because you won for Centaurworld.
I did. There was a thought of either I'm gonna, double my chances or split my own vote. So we'll see how it goes, but it worked out okay.
Yeah, I watched your award speech earlier today, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And just like you must have like because you must have heard your no, is it the show that gets said first, or is it your name that gets said first? Because if they say Kristi
So it's
Reed,
the
you think
show that so it's the show that gets so during all of that. So I was sitting in the audience and I was with my wife
uh-huh.
and then what they were doing in that particular category that year, because they did a very good job that year of making sure that they really kind of put forth representation for the everybody and for the DEIA community. And
Yeah.
so they had the person who was announcing my award for that category be someone from the hearing impaired community who was using ASL to announce the
Yeah.
award, which is
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. Unfortunately, I don't speak ASL, so when they were doing the letters, I didn't know when
Like
they were
thank
announcing
you.
it. Exactly, but my wife is smarter than me. And so as soon as they announced it and did the C, she
See.
went, "Wah!" And I'm like, I hope that's for me. I don't know. I'm hoping this is for me. And then, you go up on stage, and at that point, you're just rushed with so much adrenaline and excitement that the first thing I just wanted to make sure is that my zipper wasn't down. And then you go on stage, and everything else is just this flush of adrenaline and joy, and it's fantastic.
That's wonderful, honestly. Congratulations. Have you
Thank
still,
you.
well, silly question, but have you still got your Emmy award with you, or is it up
I
on
do.
display in your it's up oh
It
hey!
is not
Hey!
far away at all.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. And it's engraved with
Yes.
your name on it, so no one else can
Yeah,
have
yeah,
it.
all those things. Yeah. It's great.
That's
It's an amazing way to validate all your work. It is wonderful.
Can you imagine if like they put Kristi Reed and they're like, which show, and they put Summer Camp Island, it's like, oh, but then like they do, but then like they could have done like Kristi Reed signed the word K on stage, and you're thinking, yeah, well, your wife could be cheering, yay, and you're like, which show? Which show is it? And
Yeah,
you have a good
exactly.
chance.
Yes,
That's
yes, yes.
seriously well done, though.
So,
Seriously,
yeah.
well done. I'm very, very happy for you.
Yeah, it was great.
It's awesome, definitely. Now I've got to ask, now working with all of these actors on Transformers Earthspark, so as mentioned before, Weird Al Yankovic, and Alan Tudyk and Rory McCann, and then you got Danny Pudi, and just all these people, just wow, just like, what is it like to sort of come into the session and direct these I'd say famous people? Like, I presume you just treat them like they were just any other voice actor. Like,
that's the main thing is just to make them feel welcome and to treat them like everybody else, and to not be afraid to direct them. I think that's something that happens a lot, is people get intimidated by these larger name celebrities.
Yes.
And they don't push them for better performances, which doesn't benefit anybody. The actor wants to be represented well. They want their performance to look good. And so you have to push through that, any kind of anxiety you have of whatever their status is, and treat them like every other actor and get the best performance you can.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like they respect that. The more that I treat them like everyone else, the better response I get from them, because they realize that I am doing my best to make their performances as equally good as everybody else in the show.
Definitely, yeah. Now I've got to ask this. I'm feeling a bit silly. Of course, I've been to Nickelodeon animation in Burbank myself. And seeing how fun it is and everything that's available, how would you give it out of 10? Is it fun? Is it do you like the studio? How fun it is?
I love the studio. The studio is great. Yeah, Nickelodeon's great. It's a great studio. It's a lot of fun. It has a wonderful interior courtyard that I think is fantastic. That's got a big grassy area. There's a stage. They have an old silver Streamliner trailer that is basically you just to go and hang out in if you want. There's lots of little corners to just chill. So sometimes if I have a session there, it's in the morning and the afternoon, I'll just spend the day in the middle of the day in the courtyard. It's great. It's a wonderful studio. And, a lot of these studios are trying to figure out what to do with all this space, because in the 10 years running up to the pandemic, we were making a lot of animation and we just couldn't have enough office space. So everybody created more and more office space. And then during the pandemic, no one wanted to, no one was going into an office. And then now we're having a hard time getting people to come back into the studios. Yeah. So that's good for me, because sometimes I just wander the halls and find an empty office that no one is using and make that my office, because I'm a freelancer and I don't have really an office anywhere. So I do like sort of the hobo quality I have at the studios.
But honestly, yeah, I won't even call it a workplace. It's a playground. I find it like
it is a good playground. Yeah,
I'd love to work there. Really fun.
Yeah, I think that it's great.
Speaking of working there, of course, Nicole Dubuque, one of the writers on the show, she voices Nova Storm on Skywarp. What was it like to voice direct her? Sorry.
It's great. I mean, she clearly has done it before, so she had that experience. A lot of times when you're directing, she's done a couple of voices before. I think a lot of times when you're directing, and she was great, and she was very much open to direction. She didn't, have it in her head that she knew best, which is always very helpful for me. But one of the things that you have, to keep in mind when you are directing writers and creators in the performance space is to first ingratiate their trust, because they have to hand over the feeling that I know best, which I get because you did create it, and it's a big trust fall to hand it to somebody else. And once they do that, I think we always get in a really good space. So it's just that, and that's a matter of me building a relationship with them that allows them to feel they can do that. And Nicole was great with that. She was very from the beginning. She was not so invested that she wasn't willing to hear, maybe let's try it like this, and think that coming around it from a different direction might be something, although she hadn't heard it when she wrote it, might be a better way to do it, and which was great.
Yeah, awesome. So are you the casting director as well, or are you just the voice director for Earthspark?
Right now, I'm mainly doing voice directing. I am not the casting director on that show. The casting director on that show is, I believe, Lorena Gallego, who is a wonderful person. And I've always preferred directing over casting. So right now, if I can fill my hours with directing, and then I'm going to choose that.
Ooh, that's a good choice. Yeah. That's a good choice. Yeah. So before we wrap it up here, because we are running out of time, because I've only got about 5-10 minutes left, I think. I don't know. Anyways, Merry Little Batman that you recently
Sure.
did for
Yeah.
HBO
Uh-huh.
Max. What
Yeah.
was it like to direct that? I was going to say because you voice directed children and adults. Is it?
Yeah.
Would you say it's different for voice directing children to
Yes.
voice directing adults?
Yes. Yeah. It's a big difference. But I think it's important to, first of all, there's a lot of things you have to do differently for kids that aren't entirely different for adults too. But particularly for kids, particularly young kids, Jonas, who voices the character Damien, Merry Little Batman, and there's actually a subsequent spin-off that's coming out, I think, soon that is called Bat Family, based on the movie.
Oh,
But he came into it very young, and he'd done a few credits before, but they were always kind of minor roles. None of it was very big, and he had to carry the lead in a feature film, and he didn't have a lot of experience. So, and this was also during the pandemic, so I couldn't be in a room with him, which I think is also a disadvantage. But
yeah.
all that said, he is someone that you just have to, he's a wonderful kid and he kind of bounces off and his energy's out, which is great and it's great for the character, but it also means, dude, I got to rein you in for some of this stuff. And I think that really what kids pick up on is whatever energy I give into the session is the same energy the kid's going to give back to me. So if I need the kid to get grounded, I will talk a little more quietly. I will slow the pace. And then when we get into an action sequence, I'll pick up the energy and I'll pick up the pace. And all of that becomes very much something they feed off of. So it becomes a release and a tightening of tension that the kid and the actor need to connect with. And so I just try to create that. I don't have to do that so much for adults. They'll have a little bit more instincts and all of that because they've done it longer. But it's really just a matter of doing it to know when that is, as opposed to me to have to sort of create that energy line between us.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that really. Just like I'm looking at the cast for Merry Little Batman. Yeah, Jonas. Yeah, he's been in he's in the new Elio film. He's in Young
Hmm.
Jedi Adventures in Obstruction. You know, just it seems
Yeah,
like all the
he's done
children.
stuff.
Yeah, all these children in Hollywood. You know, like Juliette Donenfeld and
Yeah, she's
I
been around
think
forever.
Tucker
Yeah,
Chandler, Jakari
yeah,
Frazier. Just like
yeah.
they're all sort of doing the same projects. Like it's sort of like
Because they're very good, and
I
so when
know
that
who's
happens, they end up getting a lot of the roles.
Grayson Newton. That was the other. That's
Uh-huh.
the other one I was thinking of
Yeah,
because he's done.
yeah,
'Cause he was in Pretzel and the Puppies, Playdate with Winnie the Pooh.
yeah,
You know, just all these
yeah,
people just doing
yeah,
amazingly, and
yeah.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous of people younger than
Ah, I
me.
can get it. Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of that is, yeah, if you're very good,
More
and then
McCoy
when they
and
want children performers, you will work a lot. I mean, there's a lot of kids who really cut their teeth and who moved on. I mean, like Nicholas Cantu, who was a child actor and now is one of the leads on the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He plays
oh
Leo, but
yeah, yeah,
he's transitioned to many of it. He's in one of the Star Wars things with Zeno, but he also has an on-camera career and all of that. It 100% can lead you into all the on-camera stuff if that's your goal.
yeah,
It can also keep you busy in voiceover through your career if that's your goal. But
yeah,
it is a great gateway into the industry.
yeah, definitely. And I was gonna say with Merry Little Batman, I think David Hornsby was nominated
He
last
was for
year
an
for the
Annie
children's
for his
film for
performance. Yeah,
was it? Oh,
for
it
the
was the
Joker.
Annies. Yes, because I remember who
Yeah.
was it who won? I think it was Diamond White. Diamond White who
Oh, that
won.
may be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the I was gonna say because the next Children and Family Emmys is coming up in January, and the
I
nominations
have.
will
Yeah.
be released this week. So
This week, I think actually in a couple of weeks. Right
how is it?
now, yeah, because I'm actually do the judging on it. So that's what
Oh
I'm doing this
wow!
afternoon
So
is judging for
how,
some of that.
I was gonna say, how does that work? So do you select people or do you just judge?
So there's two rounds, and it depends on what you get asked to do. I've been doing it for a while. I've been doing it for a few years.
Did you do
Um,
voice directing?
I do recuse myself from things at which I am nominated for. So
I was
I
gonna say, were you allowed to
don't
judge
vote
your
for
own
myself.
category?
No, I don't vote for myself. So this year I've been asked to judge voice directing, casting, and animation directing for a preschool level show. And so,
Ooh.
yeah, it's great. And so
Nice.
for the casting and animation, there are two rounds that you get, and it was actually very humbling when I first started doing it because I had no idea how many voice directing submissions there are. And there's
Yeah.
like 60 to 80 that come in. And then
Yeah.
that gets taken down into another shorter submission of like 25. And then you do the second round. And the
Yeah.
second round is where all that basically comes in. But
You get to
same with
4 or
casting. So
5.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
then you get narrowed down to the 4 or 5 people who are in the final category.
Yeah, and so and then our submissions for that are due next Tuesday, and then I think
Ah,
it's 2 weeks
right.
after that that I believe the announcement will be made for the nominations.
Someone said it was this week. I was going to say because the event's always been held in December and it's usually sort of
Yeah, but
around
they've
this
pushed it to
time.
January, so everything got pushed out a couple of weeks this year.
Right. So I can't wait to see who's nominated because you never
I know,
know. Like,
yeah,
and you're
you
just
never
thinking,
know. It's
or on
true.
my podcast the day after, congratulations,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
just
It's also really interesting to me to see, what gets narrowed down into each of those two categories for all of it,
yeah,
Kat, because
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's fascinating.
yeah, definitely. I agree with you. Well, Kristi, is there any shows aside from Max and the Midnights that you're working on at the
Hmm.
moment that you can say about, or
Yeah,
NDA?
I think so. Let's see. I'm working because they've all been announced. So, like this morning, the session that I had before you was second season of Fiona and Cake, and
Oh,
then in about 35 minutes, I'm gonna hop on some ADR for a show called Stugo, Student Government for Disney Plus. That's been announced. It will air in January. It's a
oh
lot of fun.
wow.
It's a great cast.
Hmm.
Max and the Midnights is airing now. Trying to think of things that I can talk about.
I was gonna say because if it doesn't feels like you are the casting director because you've worked with Zeno lots of times, you've worked with Sidney
I
Michaela
have,
lots of
but
times. I'm thinking
Zeno's just great.
coincidence.
That has nothing to do with me. I did not cast him in that. He's
Coincidence.
just a really wonderful actor.
Yeah, I
And let me see
agree.
if there's anything else that I can probably talk about. What's coming
If not,
out?
it's fine.
Yeah, I think that's it that I feel comfortable
Okay.
talking about. But I keep in generally rotation. I try to keep between like 5 to 7 shows going at the same time.
Wow, wow, that's
Yeah,
really
so,
impressive. That
yeah,
wow. Well, Kristi, thank you so
sure.
much for coming
Yeah,
on my show. Is there
yeah. Thanks
anything?
for having me.
You're welcome. Sorry, I didn't mean to say. Well, is there anything? Have you got any social media pages or websites you like to promote? Where can everyone find you online?
Sure, you can find me on Instagram at Dang Kristi Reed,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. Like I said, I am working on another project right now that's kind of a side project with a few other people that we're going to announce in the same week that the Emmys come out, and we'll do
Ooh.
that on social media. It's definitely for the queer community, so I'm excited to put that out there, and
Mm-hmm.
you can find us on once that gets up and going as well.
Ooh, sounds very exciting.
It is.
Well,
I'm
thank
excited about
thank
it.
you so much for letting me talk to you, Christy. It's been an
No, thanks
absolute
for reaching out.
pleasure.
It was a
You're
pleasure.
welcome. And to you at home, thank you so much for watching this episode of In Conversation with the ATF with the lovely Kristi Reed. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did recording this with them. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you soon. All right, take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank
And
you.
and cut.